Hey Morgan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Yeah, I'm glad you're in this class. It's been I can't remember last time I had you as a student.
I know it's been a while. You thought I graduated.
I figured you were running a hedge fund in New York or something. I figured you were like, nah, I don't need to do school anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I see Julianne. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thank you. We won't know what we're going to do when we actually have to be in the building. I am going to be on campus tomorrow, though. Uh-oh. There's the dynamic duo. People are coming in. I think we've about got a quorum here.
Um,
Andres, how are you, sir?
Hi.
How are things in your world?
Sorry.
How's life treating you?
Pretty good, pretty good.
All right, good. Just Franco's bothering you. That's kind of the only thing.
Oh, no, 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 no. We're here. Chilling, we're chilling, we're chilling.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Well, let's go ahead and get started. What is on tap for today? So we're going to be going through chapter 5. We're going to talk about a very interesting case having to do with is bribery okay or not? And then Julia and Andres are going to lead us through a an interesting topic, and I can't wait to hear about that. Any questions before we get started? All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and go to slides. Oh man, I forgot I rebooted. One moment, please. I've been having fun with statistics today. I'm sure you guys are probably jealous. All right. All right. So, yeah, as we were saying, we're going to talk about case 2 point or 2-3 and then our topical discussion leaders, which will be very exciting. Whoops. Oh, I need to unhide. I thought I had this unhidden, but I didn't. Like I was saying on Tuesday, I'm again making a concerted effort to get very much dialed in to your generation, since there's about 40 years separating us. And so I really am making an intentional effort to understand you all as a generation, and then let's look at Scripture to see what Scripture tells us about some of the challenges. You don't have to be a Gen Z to struggle with anxiety or depression. I would say that it's an extremely common thing. And whether you're 60 or 20, it can be a thing. So, this is interesting. I will say here, when you look at this slide, the significant increase, certainly over the last 17 years or so, in anxiety and depression among your generation. Again, the scholar Jonathan Haidt, he he's trying to draw I don't know if it's a causation, but trying to draw a correlation between a lot of the social media and other kind of screen related things that you all have grown up with, and which seem to be leading toward anxiety or depression. So when I was thinking about this slide, what occurred to me is one of my favorite verses in 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love. And one version, I don't remember which translation it was, but I really like, he says, but of power and of love and of a sound, healthy mind. I like the word healthy. And so I would just say, from my own personal experience, when I seek to humble myself and let Christ live through me, then I'm reminded that if Christ's Holy Spirit, if He's living inside of me and I have His mind, that His mind is perfectly healthy. And so I try to focus on that and really lean into that truth. So hopefully that is an insight or helpful for you all. Any comments, questions about that? It's okay to talk about it if you want to. It's just me. All right. Well, I'm going to assume silence means understand and agree. So, all right. Going to be talking more about culture and particularly as it relates to management style. We've touched on some of these elements already. We're just drilling a little bit deeper on each of these. Um, there are certain things that are, business etiquette. Um, one of the things that, um, not this class, but my other class, undergraduate class, the winning uh, mini group is going to be have a free lunch on me at Harry's in Palomar. And one of the things we're going to talk about is business etiquette. What do you wear? How do you behave? What are some of the things that you would do and not do? And of course, that differs by culture, the way that one eats. I'll never forget, probably 30 years ago, I was in Boston at a conference, and a bunch of us decided we wanted to go to have some different food. If you've been to Boston, there's everything in the world that you could imagine from a food standpoint. And what was interesting is that we all sat on the floor and we all sat in a circle and there was like this bowl or pan, really, and then there was like it looked like pie dough that was sort of inside the bowl and a layer that just sort of draped over the edges. And I thought, wow, I really don't know what's going on here, but I was open to check it out. So. Um, some of you may know where this is going. So finally, when we decided what food we're going to get, I don't know what it was. I think it was, a mixture of meat and vegetables, kind of all in the same thing. And basically, the server basically had this like big ice cream scooper kind of thing and scooped out a big pile of meat, ground up, whatever it was, and plopped it right in the middle of that bowl. And we didn't have any eating utensils. We just had to basically tear off, a piece of that, looked like, again, sort of pie dough. And we would use that, put it in our hand, and then we would grab a piece from the middle where everybody was grabbing from the same place and ate like that. And I'll never forget that. That was very interesting. I'm not saying it was bad, but it was definitely interesting. I don't know. Have you guys ever had an experience where you're like, whoa, that was really different? No? How many of you would say, give me a thumbs up if you would say, yeah, I'm open to it, but that might be, a bit of a stretch for me. Any thumbs up out there? How many people would say, no, I'm not doing that? Yeah, okay. I might be just talking to myself. I'm not sure. Let me see if I can see your smiling faces. Oh, I see a couple of thumbs up there. All right. Um, yeah, Julia, I see your smiling face there. I mean, would you be up for that kind of interesting food like that?
I think I'm pretty adventurous when it comes to food.
All
And
right.
I've eaten food in um like London.
Yeah.
Which isn't like it's not bad, but when I went to London last summer, it was interesting because a lot of their food just is not seasoned like at all.
Yeah.
And like we went to Five Guys and the fries there had no salt on them.
Oh,
That was kind of sad.
that is very sad. Those fries are just salt delivery systems, really. I mean, they serve no purpose other than to take that pound of salt and put it in your mouth, which isn't really probably very good. But yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? Any other kind of what you felt like was a little out of the ordinary for you? Kind of culinary experience. No, nobody else. Everybody just eats cheeseburgers. Okay. Um, another thing, from a business etiquette standpoint, one thing that last I checked, this was very normal as it relates to Japanese business culture. You guys can check me on this. But as I understand it, the real business, if let's say you're an American and you're in Japan and you're doing business with the Japanese, um, I know this is not AA, but they basically all the business is done at dinner and everybody just gets completely wasted. And but that's how they get connected. So I'm not advocating for that, right? But I'm just saying that once you leave sort of your comfort zone, you have to sort of be open to, okay, they don't do this in Covington, Kentucky, but okay. Um, and it's sort of a question of how are you as a Christian business person going to react to that or respond to that. One of the biggest things that uh, probably goes without saying is that when we get outside of our culture, whether, you were born in the US and worked, or you go to either another part of the US or outside, and several of you grew up born and raised outside the US, that you have to be at least have some kind of mindset which is open to, again, not immediately um, judge out of hand. Hey, this is weird because it's not like what I've done for 20 years, and therefore it must be bad. So I would say that some of you, if you've taken Myers-Briggs exam, or there's one that I think is more scientifically reliable, called the Big Five. And one of the big dimensions in the Big Five personality test is a level of openness. So, are you willing to try new things? Are you willing to experiment? Are you willing to embed yourself in a different culture, different language, a different way of doing things? And what I would argue is that if you have that disposition, working outside of your culture is going to be probably for you a lot easier. It's not that other people that are not, they don't have that predisposition to being open can't cope, but I would say it probably takes a little bit more concentration and focus for them. Some other attributes that we want to embody, humility. I think in general, humility is really good. That doesn't mean, hey, everybody's better than me. What it means is I am open and willing to be educated and not presume that I know everything at every point in time. Okay. And so that's certainly something that is helpful. Curiosity and interest, like we were saying before, around openness. If you're curious about new things, so Julia, I don't know what was motivating you when you were in London to go to Five Guys. Maybe you were like, hey man, I really like Five Guys in Fishers, but maybe it's different in London, England. Turns out it was, but you were like, hey, I sort of wanted to check it out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely um I was kind of curious like the how it would compare. And also I think I was feeling a little homesick for American food.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean the tea and crumpets didn't really go very far with you?
Maybe not.
No. Um, yeah. I mean, about 10 years ago, my wife and I were in London coming back from, I think it was from Vienna, and we had a wonderful meal we had high tea, and clearly this was more for her than it was for me. It wasn't like I got a big cheeseburger or anything, but it was, nice little china, and I think like Princess Diana used to live there. I don't know the whole story. There's a beautiful garden, but it didn't really do a lot for me. She thought it was pretty cool. I remember when I went to London when I was 17 many years ago. And I think maybe I told you guys this. I woke up and I was like, man, I am starving. We flew all night, got there, tried to sleep, like, hey, we got a big day. Let's have a big breakfast. It was like a hard roll with like some jam. And I was like, okay, this is not what I was hoping for. But that's okay, right? Again, humility, openness, being willing to learn and to be embedded in that other environment. Um, Again, this idea of adaptation, knowing in advance what are the customs and differences so that you can mentally, have the proper attitude, have the proper mindset to go into that new environment and say, you know what, I'm open to kind of whatever, right? I mean, anything that's ethical and according to the Bible, and that's sort of a given, right? Sometimes there are, what we might categorize imperatives, electives, and exclusives, right? So, um, again, this is just sort of, being open and educating yourself on what is expected in a business environment, right? I mean, really, the essence of business and many things in life is the ability to quickly build and maintain trust. And if you have taken the time to educate yourself to understand what is expected, uh, really without question in a different culture, then, that certainly leads to building trust because, again, you've established, hey, I realize that I'm in your world now, and I'm not in my world. And therefore, I'm trying to humble myself, show you respect, what have you. Um, the French are often, derided, and maybe rightly so, I don't know. But they are very proud of their language and they're very proud of their culture. And my experience has been, as well as others that I know, that in general, if you try to speak French, that I'm not necessarily saying they will be nice to you, but they will at least take into consideration that you are trying to understand their language, right? Um, I, I'm going to pick on Franco just because he's a great dude and he helps me understand different parts of your generation and his world. So did you feel like Franco, like, let's say if when you were growing up, if there was someone from the U.S. that maybe their Spanish was not very good, but they were trying. Did that make you feel like, well, their Spanish sucks, but at least they're trying?
I think that's a great question, Dr. Ross. I think in contrast to the French, um, we don't like the entitlement of being a local. So we're a very tourist friendly country. It doesn't matter where you're from. If you're visiting Argentina, I can assure you every single Argentinian will make their best performance to like just make you feel welcome, show you around or tell you where to go or what food to order, so it doesn't really matter. If you're a friendly tourist, you're gonna be real welcome in Argentina. I think we do that well.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
great. Great to know.
I didn't have much exposure with tourists, but in the tennis academy that I was playing, every now and then we would have some exchange player from like France or Europe or the US or some other country. And personally, we would always try to just, have fun with him, make jokes, make him or her feel welcome, and just, involve the kid in the day to day. Nothing special, nothing different, just you're just one more, So I think that's my experience.
No, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that is very interesting. You hit on something that is really important, probably at a macro level. If your country, I'm just making a general statement, if your country is very dependent upon, excuse me, tourism, then you as an individual from that country and probably everyone in the country, if they understand how important tourism is, you would think, wow, well, I want to be nice. I want to be friendly. I'm not going to like hand them the keys to my Ferrari and say, take it out for a spin. But I might say, hey, if you need help, I can tell you, like you said, if you're not seeing what you like on the menu, maybe I can help you or, um, those kinds of things. So that's great. Thank you, Franco. All right. Um, this is kind of funny, and this is supposed to be apolitical, right? Um, but an observation. Um, so this is Macron, the president of France, and then I think everybody knows who this guy is. Well, Trump is, from all accounts, a teetotaler. But for whatever reason, I guess, in the state dinner with Macron being there, he felt like, hey, I at least have to, I don't know if pretend, but I'm going to join in this gesture of friendship or community or whatever you might call that. Um, I'm not going to like, ask him. Well, I don't really talk to him very often, if ever. Um, but, I don't know if he drank any wine or not, but he certainly was going through that sort of custom, right? Maybe same kind of thing here between, um, this is Angela Merkel from Germany, former Prime Minister. I should know that. Anyway, the head of the state government in Germany with the German, or excuse me, with the, I believe, a Chinese diplomat. And so, maybe she thought whatever that champagne was horrible. But she said, yeah, well, to be a guest and show respect, then I will at least participate at some level. So. Um, we talked about this before, so again, I really am reluctant and hesitate to make this class like, hey, how are they supposed to behave outside the U.S.? I don't really want that to be the case because I don't think that's fair to all the students, particularly the ones that grew up outside the U.S. So I'm not going to, belabor the point, but obviously, I would say in general, if you're an American, you born and raised, and you go outside the U.S., or if you go to even a different part of the U.S., to be humble. Don't just, pretend, oh, I'm an American, so great, everybody ought to just bow down to me, which I don't think any of you all would do that, right? But I'd say there'd be probably a significant minority percentage that would be from the US that would go overseas and would be completely oblivious. So, but you guys are much more refined than that, so I wouldn't have to worry too much about that. When we think about management practices in particular, we talked about this Tuesday, is this notion of power distance that Hofstede talks about. And basically what um, he's displaying here in a high uh, power distance country, subordinates are not likely to contradict bosses. So if you are, you're either living in a culture, working in a culture that, it's basically whatever the boss says goes. We don't question him or her, we just do it, right? Then you're probably, it's not like a discussion. It's okay, the boss said do ABC, and that's what you do, right? Now, if you're in a lower power distance country, again, you might view the boss as just one of the team. And, depending upon the organization's culture and that individual's management style, they might say, hey, man, this is what we're going to do, but I am open to have the conversation if someone has a big disagreement. Okay, to what I'm saying. I know again, Franco, I think you had told me in the past that you had spent some time in like a military academy. Is that right?
Oh, high school.
High school. Okay, high school. I'm imagining that experience at high school was very hierarchical. Like you had like a lieutenant or a captain or a colonel, and he or she basically said, "We're not talking about this. This is what we're going to go do." And then all of that just happened the way they said, right?
Um, yeah, yeah, whatever I remember, whatever the instructor says is the word of God type thing.
Yeah,
If
their
if
word
they
is the
yeah,
law, right? Yeah.
if they tell you to jump, you ask how high.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And thank you for sharing that because you could imagine I never served in the military, probably should have, but when I study and learn about and watch different movies and books about different military campaigns and so on. You can't really execute a military operation and then, every 3 minutes as you're marching up the hill, kind of take a time out and say, hey, let's talk about, this or that. I mean, you know, you hesitate for 1 minute, everybody dies, right? So that's an extreme example, but in an organization that has a high power dynamic, that's just the way it is, and you kind of have to know going in. This is not a place where we have open discussion. We just, a decision is made and we execute on it. Um, there's a management theorist that some of you may have read or heard about, um, Douglas McGregor back in the 50s, and just a fascinating scholar. And he developed this basically this management approach that he called Theory X and Theory Y. Um, and I would just say for my own approach, I'm very much a theory why kind of management style. Theory why is, hey, I'm working with smart people. I'm going to give direction. I expect them to do it, but I'm open to have the conversation and I'm not going to micromanage them. It's like, hey, I told you what I want you to do. I'm paying you. Just go do it, please. Um, but I'm open to discussion. Theory X, it's a very dark view, and I could spend lots of time talking about it. But basically, McGregor found, I would say, primarily through his study of the early 20th century in the U.S. In business that many managers at that time, I'm talking, 1910, 1920, 1930, they basically felt like, hey, I'm the boss. Everybody I work with is not as smart as me, and I'm not going to discuss what we're doing. I'm just going to give the order and it's going to go happen, right? And I think it's a pretty dark view. I think the military, it makes a ton of sense. I would say 30 years in industry, 20 of those years for me were in very much what I would say a high power dynamic organization, which I wasn't really crazy about, to be honest. Um, but I did what I had to do. So, all right. Here we are, Julia and Andres. If you could, I'm going to turn it over to you and I'm going to stop sharing. If you would lead the discussion, I can't wait.
Awesome. Andres, do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
Uh-oh. Is he there? Uh-oh.
Um,
Cat's
we
got
kind
his
of
thumb.
worked on the notes together, but I
Sorry,
can
sorry.
I can go ahead and talk
We're in
first.
the room. We're in the room with Andy. Andy's in the restroom right now. He'll be back. He just left the
Okay.
restroom.
Okay.
I'm so
No
Uh-oh.
sorry.
worries. I can
We
kind of
scared
go
him.
over
Yeah, go
I
ahead
can
and
kind of
start.
go over
Yeah,
the notes we did and then when he comes back, if he has things to add or elaborate on, that's totally fine.
that'd be great.
So what we kind of researched was different management styles and how they differ across different cultures. So some of the biggest differences we found um, were like Western cultures versus Asian and Middle Eastern cultures. So with Western cultures like the US and Germany, they often have very individualistic, egalitarian, which is focusing on equal rights and opportunities for everyone, and direct styles of management, which definitely kind of relates to more democratic forms of government. And in Asian and Middle Eastern cultures, you tend to see a lot more hierarchical, collectivist, and consensus-driven styles of management. And this makes a lot of sense because in a lot of Asian cultures, especially China, you have kind of a large gap of power. Um, and when you have more communist governments, um, it's a lot more common for subordinates to be more comfortable just taking direct orders from um, their leaders. And one specific example that's kind of interesting that we found is kind of comparing US CEOs to Japanese leaders.
Okay.
So a lot of the times, CEOs in the US are seen as very public figures. Think like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, um, I don't know,
Yeah.
CEOs.
Yeah, right.
And so they're very open about expressing their vision and personality. Um, versus Japanese leaders, a lot of the times they work more behind the scenes, and decisions are made after very lengthy consultations with others. And they kind of focus more on humility over personal promotion. And again, this really reflects the differences between an individualistic and a collectivist society.
Hmm.
And then the other thing we kind of talked about was looking more in depth into leadership styles. So in places, and this might kind of repeat some of what I already said, but in places like China, Russia, and the Middle East, is more authoritative leadership. So you have a lot of top-down communication, centralized decision making, and again, leaders make decisions kind of without consultation, and so subordinates are used to clear direction. In places like Sweden, the Netherlands, and Australia, you have a lot of participative leadership. And so this is a lot more team-oriented. There's a lot of open dialogue, collaboration, and empowered employees. And this is interesting to think about. Sweden and the Netherlands specifically kind of operate on a Nordic model. Um, which is like in their government, which basically blends capitalism with extensive social welfare. So not a total like socialist government, but all three of those countries specifically have um, a lot more emphasis on trying to provide a lot of kind of equality and equal like resources um, for their citizens. And so it kind of reflects as well in their management styles. In places like India, Turkey, South Korea, and Latin America is more of a paternalistic leadership. Um, and so in countries like this, there are very, very strong family values, as well as being collectivist societies. So in countries like these, leaders act as parental figures. And so there is a large emphasis on care for employee well-being, which is very interesting. And then finally, kind of like I said in the beginning, places like the US, as well as Brazil and South Africa, you have a charismatic or transformational leadership. So again, your CEOs are going to be very visionary, energetic, and emotionally engaging. So kind of think like TED Talks or motivational speakers. Um, that's something that is very common in the US, but I would like to guess that that's not necessarily a mainstay in every other culture like it is in the US. Um, and again, it's very performance oriented and individualistic. So kind of from what I found, it's very interesting comparing not only how the government of different cultures works, but also how people people treat each other and just kind of treat and see power structures in general, and how that translates specifically into management styles. And if Andres has other things to add, if she's back, no pressure if not. But um,
Yeah, well, maybe if we can, let me ask you, Julia, a couple of
mhm,
questions. So, hopefully these are pretty easy to answer, but I think everyone should ask themselves these questions. So, um, from a leadership style
mhm,
standpoint, which one do you think more reflects your particular leadership style?
mm. I definitely think either like more of a Western, like charismatic or transformational um, leadership style, or participative leadership. Um, I almost, I don't know, I almost want to say I'm more in the Sweden, Netherlands, and Australia camp, um,
Okay.
because I tend to not be someone who necessarily wants to stand out too much, but instead I I remember in group projects, like I would always kind of be the person to um kind of make sure that everyone was participating and asking like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Um, while still sometimes being kind of more of the positive, um, enthusiastic group member who kind of encourages people. Because I know for myself, I respond very well to a charismatic and transformational leadership style. But I don't know if I am necessarily someone who would be um, inclined necessarily to lead in that way. But I definitely feel like I respond well to that, which makes sense because um, in public school, at least, I feel like that's something that is um, we're exposed a lot to. And also, I've just watched a lot of TED Talks. So,
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So that's interesting. So you feel like maybe that's your style, and I'm guessing by extension, whatever organization that you would work in after you graduate, you would feel like, yeah, that would be sort of where I would thrive, maybe.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's no, that's very interesting. Um, all right, great, great job. Um, well, if Andres comes back, we will welcome any of his additional input. Um, all right, I'm going to go back to our slides here. Um, you know, a little bit of what you were touching on, Julia, this idea of how are decisions made, right? Are decisions made all the way up at the top, by everyone with the title that starts with C, or are those decisions delegated down to the lowest level of the organization where it's more of a flat organization rather than, this sort of pyramid, hierarchical. And again, that I think is largely reflective of the culture. I could imagine if there is, more of a communistic or socialistic kind of system, I would imagine that, management style is going to be not very decentralized, right? Um, and, there are pros and cons to that. Again, my view is pushing the decision making down to the lowest level possible, I think is um, the best, but that's sort of my personal preference. Um, one of the things, again, me trying to personally get really locked into your generation is this idea of work-life balance. Um, I have to confess, I'll sound like the real grandpa here, but I remember when our son would talk to me about work-life balance when he was in high school, and I was like, I don't know what that is, man. I mean, all I know is the sun was up, I was at work. And when I came home, it was probably dark, and I was even working when it was dark. Now, I'm not recommending that is the approach um, for you all. But again, that's something that, from my perspective, is relatively new. And I'm not saying that's bad, but it's definitely sort of a new thing for me from sort of a cultural perspective. This idea of uh, job mobility and personal security. Do I have a good family life, kind of balance? That can vary by obviously if your family is, quote unquote, you know, traditional, and you have, mom and dad at home, and it's sort of like, you know. The idealized kind of family, then, that might dictate, how often mom and dad are at work or at home, or, how many vacations, or, are your parents available or are they not available? Right? Those are, th those can vary by family and certainly by culture and in different parts of the world. This is interesting here. Of course, I love these kinds of tables, and the data's a little bit old, but what's interesting to me is that, for example, here, the UK, on average, workers worked 17 hours a year, and then it looks like there was a drop. Now, one thing, I probably should have labeled this a little bit better. What I was primarily interested in is if how do these other workers in different countries, what is their level of number of annual hours worked versus the average American? And this kind of makes sense to me, right? I mean, pretty much out of these, however many, what are they, like 12 here? About one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, oh, 10. That out of the 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 60% of these countries, the average worker works less. Um, Personally, I think the Europeans have got vacation just right. I would love to have a whole month, like the month of August, off. I think that would be really cool. Now, before you say, yeah, but you're a professor, you don't work in the summer. Well, I've been doing this for 10 years. It still feels weird to me, you know. 30 years, we're like, yeah, we might be gone 3 days and then it's back to work. It's still a little ingrained in me. But I will say that I think the Europeans and other parts of the world where they say, hey, you know what? Everybody's going to take a month off. I think that's pretty cool. So. Um, and then the poor South Koreans and Mexicans, at least according to this data, work more than the average American in 2010. So that's pretty interesting. Um, I don't know if there's anything surprising for you all. Um, yeah, it's just sort of an interesting little anecdote. Several years ago, probably 15 years ago, my wife and she had a conference in Athens, Greece. And so she was at, the conference a lot, but then they also gave her some free time so we could walk around and tour stuff, and which is always cool. Um, and one thing shocked me, right? So again, this was probably like 20, might have been like 2007, maybe something like that. That it seemed like nobody was working. Like literally, when we would be in a cab or, in a bus going somewhere, it was like, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the sidewalk cafes and bars completely full. Everybody drinking, everybody smoking. And I remember asking our cab guy, I'm like, hey man, I'm not trying to be rude. Does anybody work here? And he's like, man, a lot of people don't. I'm like, okay, that's interesting, right? So again, it's always dangerous to generalize, but that was an interesting thing for me to see. So anyway, take that for what it's worth. I do think Americans in general work too much. Um, I don't know if that's going to change. So even with AI, I don't know if technology change is going to, lessen the per person, workload. I'm kind of thinking, looking at history of technological advancements over the last, you know, 40, 50 years, nobody's working less here. So it'll be interesting. Hall, he talks about different communication styles. And again, I think you all certainly have experienced this. Maybe it's like, I don't really want to have to meet with someone in person. If I could just text them, that would be great, right? Um, that again is a little bit unusual for me. Um, 30 years, basically everything, but not everything, but the vast majority of things, if you needed to get stuff done in a large organization, it was, hey, I need to come see you, and I'm going to walk a quarter mile across campus and meet with you. And we talk about, we might have an email to sort of back up the meeting or to sort of set the table for the meeting. But face to face was certainly very common for me. In what Hall refers to as a high context culture, um, there's a lot more, sort of uh, relational communication and less, hey, you know what, we don't have to meet. We'll settle it on email. Now, again, that would vary by culture. That'll vary even by organization, right? So, just being aware of that. Um, this is interesting here. I love these little um, abstract graphics that sort of explain. Here, Hall is saying that basically, in the upper right, as you go from left to right, these are cultures that tend to be more contextual. Um, and let's get together, let's talk about it, let's not have one person, let's get consensus, right, as opposed to um I always love the Swiss, right? I mean, there's like 1,000 people that live there, and they're all, watchmakers or whatever. Just joking, but the Germans kind of make sense to me, right? You know, pretty much, I don't want to meet. Let's just, we'll figure out what we need to do and let's just go do it, right? I think this portrayal of where the U.S. is located here, according to Hall, that feels pretty accurate. Um, so. I don't know. I mean, again, Franco, I don't want to, keep filling up your Zoom inbox here, but does this kind of make sense to you? Do you feel like, it's more collaborative from your standpoint in Argentina than here?
Um, yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with with Edward Hall's scale. Honestly, I don't know about Costa Rica,
Right.
because I think it's included Latin American as of everything from Mexico to Tierra del Fuego. Everything I don't think
Right.
is the same, so it may vary a little in
Of
Costa
course.
Rica or Panama, but in Argentina it's very pretty collaborative.
Okay. I'm really glad you made that distinction too. I mean, it would be a mistake to say, well, all of people that are native Spanish speakers, this is how they behave. I mean, that would be crazy, right? So I love that you provided that distinction. And even if, like, for example, I'm sure in your case, Franco, born and raised in Argentina, even, if, like you say, you went to Costa Rica or you went to other Latin American countries, you might go, wow, they have a little bit of a different accent. They have a little bit of a different view of, work-life balance or whatever it may be, right? So,
Maybe Nacho can enlighten us with the perspective from Costa Rica.
yeah, Nacho, please go ahead.
I think from Costa Rica, it's a really different culture. I think people communicate differently. Oh,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and maybe like you say, I don't know Nacho, if you've been, to Argentina, I'm sure you've been to other Latin American
That's
countries.
my bad. My battery ran out.
Oh, okay. All right.
He's,
Yeah.
he's here.
I'm
He's here.
here.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I was just saying that I'm sure you've been to other Latin American countries and you've found, oh, well, that was a little different, right? I mean, that's not how we would do it at home. So,
Yeah, no, I've been to almost every Central American country, and like every it has a similar culture in a way. It's just like small aspects that like differentiate, between us, like how people treat each other sometimes, or like service, things like that.
yeah.
I think it's key.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, Nacho. That's great. I imagine too, right? Maybe you know, the way people are treated in various Latin American cities or countries, maybe it's different in a big city versus more of a countryside kind of thing.
Definitely, definitely. I think that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way, I really it's on my bucket list to go to Buenos Aires. I've just heard it's beautiful and it's cool and it sort of big European kind of flavor and so um yeah.
Yeah, you definitely should go to Buenos Aires. Um, I'm thinking to line it up with the vacation on professors.
Okay.
Um, you should because the summer can be a little bit humid and not enjoyable in Buenos Aires. It can like be really hot. You're gonna be sweaty. But then winter is summer in the U.S. So July in Argentina is really cold. December is really hot. So maybe for the summer vacation at Asbury, you can go to Buenos Aires for a week or two. You're gonna have a blast.
Man, I am so down for that. That would be great. Well, Lord willing, if this is probably TMI, but Lord willing, if the powers that be um, feel that I am worthy of tenure, and if I get a sabbatical approved, then that makes that that event highly likely. So,
There you
but
go.
I appreciate that. So,
Of course.
yeah,
You should you
thanks.
should let me know if you go. I will ask you about your experience.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many places I want to go, and I've spent most of my overseas in Europe. But yeah, love to go to Buenos Aires. All right. Let me see. I just want to be conscious of the time here. We've talked about the differences here, these images of individualism and collectivism. Again, that can be organizationally, it can be influenced by organizational culture, and then of course the where the office is located. Is it in a big city? Is it in a smaller city or a town? Is it in the U.S. versus in Japan? So there's these other kinds of things like level of formality, right? Again, kind of giving a nod to sort of the generational gap that I've been talking about the past couple of classes. But and I really am. This is not like I'm not super focused on this, but when I was your age and I was in college, I never imagined calling my professor other than professor or doctor, him or her. But I kind of feel like maybe, it's sort of faculty dependent and it's university dependent kind of stuff. But, there are some cultures that are very formal, others, not so much. I think the perception of time, I think we've got another couple of slides. So here we go. So I would dare say that like the Germans, for example, it's all about promptness and timeliness, um, and what is referred to here as M time or monochronic time. And yeah, so he's putting North America in there. I think obviously there would be variability. The Swiss and Germans and Scandinavians, that's right. But then what I would say, and whether Nacho Andres or Franco, that I would dare say in at least in my experience working with people that born, raised, and live in Latin America. It's not that you're late, but it's like, yeah, man, I don't know, 3 o'clock, 3:15. It's pretty close, so not a big deal, right? And you could imagine if, let's say, a U.S. manager, like for example, when I was in corporate, I would work quite a bit with our office, Latin American office located in the U.S. in Coral Gables, Florida. And it was very different. And they were all responsible for sales and marketing for Latin America. And great. I loved working with them, but it was like, yeah, I don't know, man. We'll meet sometime in the afternoon. And I was kind of like, okay, hey, you're the boss, man. However you want to do this, that's okay. But, again, that sort of goes back to flexibility and being open and saying, hey, this is different. And I have to be open to understand that that would be normal in their culture. Um, let's see. I want to be conscious of the time here. Let's um, let's skip to where is our case? Aha. All right. So let's talk about our case. So I'm expecting that everyone read the case. I thought it was very interesting, and I have some personal experience with this when I was working with one of my business um, associates, or basically it was a company that manufactured products for the company I was working for. They were located in Manaus, Brazil. But let me go ahead and um, let's see. Daisy, I see you. How are you, young lady? So,
Pretty
can you
good.
tell us a little bit about the case? Just sort of a quick summary.
Yeah, so it seemed like it was kind of a hypothetical, but definitely plausible situation with like an experienced manager who had been working in some, I think, fictitious Latin American country.
Yeah, they sort of
Um,
hid the name, didn't they?
yeah,
Yeah.
and a new manager was going to be coming in to take his place, and the established guy was like training up this new guy.
Yeah.
And they got into a discussion about how uh, a couple of the officials, some sort of government officials, were wanting. They had. It seemed like they had fabricated a reason to need to make an inspection for like a shipment of washing machines or something like that,
Yep.
even though the manager, for most intents and purposes, couldn't see anything wrong with the machines.
Right.
Um, so he was suspecting that it was actually just this corrupt government official wanting a kind of hidden sort of bribe, but he wasn't entirely sure that was the case. So he paid him off anyway to do the inspection. Um,
The
and they
inspection.
also, yeah, and they also
Yeah.
talked about a similar time when um, they needed to offload a shipment from a boat or a truck or something, and it was taking an extremely long time until the manager like paid off the supervisor with a bunch of money, and then they got it done in just a couple of hours or something like that.
Yeah, well done. Thank you so much, Daisy. So, thank you for summarizing that. So, um, Let me, let's see. Uh, Eliana, how are you? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
All
good. How are
right, how
you?
are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing okay. I'm nice and warm and toasty in my little basement office here. So, um, in your opinion, do you think what Frank did in this case was ethical?
Um, I I don't really know. I was a little confused on this, and I wasn't able to find the case file. So I was looking at it right now, but I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
hmm
Julianne, what are your thoughts? Do you think Frank, what he did was ethical or not from your perspective?
I would say it's unethical just because I don't think bribery is ever okay, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think that, that's what we're talking about right now. Thank you, Julianne, is we're we're you know, I like the way Daisy said that. We're sort of dealing with the hypothetical, but knowing that almost certainly this kind of behavior happens all the time. Not everywhere, but happens in different cultures. Um, yeah, so th thank you, Julianne. Morgan, you were the first one on this Zoom, and I'm just so ecstatic that you are on board. And I want us to sort of think together, Morgan. You know, if you sort of expand a bit on this case, there were actually a lot of different parties that are really reflected in this case that when you think about it, it's like, wow, maybe this could affect m more people. So what I'd like to do, Morgan, is just kind of help me think about like, so Frank, Frank's our leading person here. Do you think that Frank benefited from this, so-called bribery practice?
Can you remind me if I didn't actually read this, forgive me, but can you remind me if Frank was the one making people uh
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah. So, like Daisy said, Frank was the guy that, he sort of ruffled some feathers, but sales have been going up a lot since he's been running that operation there in Latino. And Bill, younger guy and with a small family or younger family, they moved there. And like Daisy said, Frank's sort of showing Bill the ropes so that he can take over and Frank can retire.
mhm.
Yeah, so Frank is the one who, basically says, yeah, um, we weren't selling a lot. And then I ran across this guy, and it's sort of this inspection process. Once I sort of agreed to go along with it, sales went up, and man, it's great. And look how great a manager I am. Right. So that was Frank. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I think yeah, technically Frank is benefiting from like profit, but I mean it's all gonna catch up to him and also like morally and ethically he's not benefiting at all.
Yeah, wow. Really well said. Yeah, I mean, so I was thinking about the different parties. So we've got Frank. I neglected to list Bill. I should have listed Bill as well. Um, you know, I think, how does this affect Frank? How would it, if, you could say, for example, if I'm Bill, And I know I'm walking into this situation. I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? I'm not sure. I might have to quit this job and tell my wife, hey, we're going back home. I'm not getting involved in this kind of deal, right? There are other parties involved, right? Factory workers, the customers, government agents, the government itself, Latino, and then competitors. So what I want to do, and you really hit on it, Morgan, is there is, I would say, like the foremost authority, at least from my vantage point, uh, a fellow by the name of Hosmer. And to just show you how crazy the prices are for this book, this is the Hosmer book. Um, this thing's like $100, and I don't understand it other than they just haven't really printed that many. And if you are in business and you're a professor, then you got to get it pretty much. And I know Prof. Keck certainly is familiar with Hosmer's work as well. But Hosmer, exactly as you said, Morgan, basically said, how do we decide? Is there sort of a formula that helps us decide whether something is ethical or not? And this is sort of the crux of Hosmer's analysis. It's basically understand all the moral standards, you know, and recognize moral impacts. And then really to kind of go through this list here, who are all the people that are directly and indirectly involved, and determine for yourself, right? So Julianne, you said that's my opinion. I think the beauty of this model that Hosmer developed is that you can lean on this model to help you logically come to a conclusion whether a particular situation like what was going on here with the tool company, is it ethical to do that or not? Um, so just kind of be on the lookout for this Hosmer um, model, and I would highly encourage you all to include it in your com or your country analysis and recommendations because, as we've talked about before, particularly those of you that are going to be in marketing leadership or leadership in general. This model will, at some point in time, probably come in handy because you're going to have to make some decisions that are not necessarily black or white. They're sort of in the gray in some cases, and therefore you're going to have to have some kind of framework that you're going to be able to lean on to make help inform your decision making. So. All right, great job. I should have probably had us get there a little bit sooner than I did, but I'm just going to leave the rest of these slides to you all to review. Great job, our discussion leaders, as well as those of you that had prepared for the case. So great job. If you have any questions, obviously reach out. I'm recording this. I'll post it in Discovery so you all can review it at your convenience if you wish. And I hope you have a wonderful day. I am going to be on campus tomorrow at least till about noon, and then I've got some doctor appointment stuff I got to do in the afternoon. But blessings to you all. Be safe and warm, and I will see you soon. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.